Jefferson. I know that I've worked with you several times here in the past. I see a lot of you folks around here when we come in to work with your residents and patients. Eric is our manager. He's going to be presenting PowerPoint today to you on therapeutic support services and safe patient transfer. We have a lot of devices that you're familiar with here today, and some you may not be. If you do have questions, please feel free to ask. This is all about learning, so the more you folks know, the better care we can take of your residents. Have a nice day, and if you have any questions, like I said, feel free to ask.
I'm Eric from Howard's Medical Supply at Seala, and today I'm going to talk about pressure ulcers and therapeutic support services. This is one of those things that, frankly, no one ever wants to go on one of these mattresses, but they're actually very, very important. You guys work in an assisted care facility here, so you know if you get a patient who has Alzheimer's, dementia, someone that doesn't move around a whole lot, and all of a sudden they get a pressure ulcer, bad things can happen. I'm sure you've all heard horror stories. If not, ask me. I have lots of horror stories for you. Because a pressure ulcer is one of those things, if you don't treat it, it can actually cause patient death. And if you're not sure about what's happened at other facilities here in Yakima, just read the Yakima Herald. Some things have actually happened in other homes, not this place. So it's one of those things I want to encourage you guys to learn here. So hopefully we never have to read about certain things happening patients may ignore. So the goals and themes, one is I'm going to have you, by the end of this, if you want to, you'll be able to define a pressure ulcer. What is a pressure ulcer? And explain the basics of staging. Second, be able to explain medical justification needed to qualify for a patient for a Group 1 and Group 2 service. Third, name one advantage and disadvantage of each support service, and last, be able to match a specific product's features to benefit a specific patient population. One, I do have to give props for this PowerPoint presentation. I did not make it. One of my cohorts at Drive Medical made that. He gave me permission to use this, so I do want to say that. I wish I could have made something this cool. So this is from Drive Medical, which is a maker of one of our therapeutic support services you guys will see in the back. Okay, first. Pressure ulcers are very, very expensive. They can cost up to $70,000 to heal. Next, it is a direct cause of death for up to 8% of paraplegics and 60,000 acute care patients annually. And also, it costs our healthcare system roughly $11 billion a year to treat pressure ulcers. Oh, doesn't that look yummy? So take care of them early so they don't turn into that. Okay, what are pressure ulcers? They're localized injury to the skin and or underlying tissue. It's usually over a bony prominence, usually very common on the tailbone or coccyx right here. What happens is the patient's skin gets thin. It's usually the result from pressure, shear, friction. It generally occurs when a person is in a sitting or lying position for too long a time without moving. So you guys are all sitting down here right now, and what you're doing, you're sitting, and if your left butt cheek starts hurting, what do? You shift to the right butt cheek, then you go back and forth. Now think of an aging person, they can't do that shift anymore. So what happens is they sit on their left side, and they sit on their left side, and all of a sudden blood flow stops going to that area, and now that skin rapidly starts to die, and now they have a pressure ulcer. It can also happen with, let's say, patient transfers. They're going from like their wheelchair to the bed, and they accidentally hit their wheel really hard, and it causes an ulcer. Okay, this is what's called a pressure map. If I were to have you lay down on a bed, what you'll see are these little dots where you have the pressure. Like, so for example, you'll have pressure on the head, shoulders, butt, thighs, and that's what a normal pressure map should look like. If someone's not leaning just quite right, you can have too much weight, let's say, go on their elbow. Like, for example, patients can get pressure ulcers like on their elbow, on their foot, if they're banging the bottom of a hospital bed or their bed. So you always have to make sure you're watching all aspects of the patient. It's not always on the tailbone. That's the most common place, but it can really be anywhere on the patient. Okay, let's talk about stages. Stages is basically how bad that pressure ulcer is. So stage 1, and you would do this as your chart noting for your patient. Stage 1 is kind of a non-blanchable arrhythmia of intact skin. On average, if you have this, it takes about 14 days to heal. So this would be, you just kind of get a redness on your elbow or butt. It takes about 14 days to heal. Stage 2 is partial thickness skin loss. So this is one, not only is it red, you've lost a little bit of skin here. That, on average, takes 45 days to heal. Usually if that happens with one of your patients, you've probably gotten home health involved in this situation. Stage 1 heals fairly fast. Stage 2, it takes a little bit longer. Stage 3, you have full thickness skin loss into the sub-Q or fascia. So what happens here is you actually, if you have one of these, you actually will see kind of a divot or a crater in the skin because it's a more serious ulcer. And then stage 3 and below, you actually will get muscle, bone, and tendons involved. These are those really bad ulcers where you actually, if you were to look at it, you can actually look in and see the patient bone. These are never good, but sometimes it happens, unfortunately. Okay, on average, this is 2009 stats, Medicare spends over $110 million annually on Group 2 support services. That's what we have in the back there. I put down here 86% of the claims that have been billed to Medicare did not meet coverage criteria. And what that means is we are a supplier, we sell support services, but what we also rely on is our nurses and our caregivers giving us proper information. Does Mr. Smith truly need a support service? Does he have a Group 1? Does he have a Group 2? Does he have a Group 3 support service? So we're actually indebted to you guys. Are you guys going to fill out your chart notes properly? I have some of my billers who say, hey, they're not sending me the chart notes like they're supposed to. And you guys think we're just harassing you. It's really one of those things. If we don't have that in the patient file, insurance will not pay for these either. So it's very important whether you're one that actually does your own chart notes or whether you report to the nurse and he or she does their chart notes. It's very important to make sure you document all this stuff. Because a lot of times you guys are on the front lines and the nurse may be charting, but you actually see, oh, that ulcer or that redness on their butt is getting worse or it's getting better. Because it's one of those things, as you saw going from a Group 1 to a Group 2 to a Group 3, the worse it gets, the longer it takes to heal. So if you can catch it at a stage 1, you can heal it really, really fast. If I've had some places and some homes are like, you know, I don't think that looks right. You can see the bone. I mean, really, if they would have caught it a little bit earlier, they could have fixed it in 14 days. Now you're worried about patient death, and all sorts of other things. So this is why it's so important, because you guys are on the front line. When you see these things, you need to take care of them and report it and document it. Okay, we have all sorts of different kind of mattresses, and that's why I put them in the back, so you guys can have a general idea. I know some of you guys have seen these things. First is what I call a Group 1 mattress. It's kind of like your beginning stage driver's license. They just don't give you your driver's license these days and let you go bonkers. So what we have on that table right there are two different kinds of Group 1 mattresses. They're really nice. The bottom one is just a really nice, it's called a Solus Air mattress. What it is on the bottom is very thick foam, and then on the top is memory foam. So what happens with that is as the patient sits down on it, they actually sink into it. It's really comfortable. It's kind of like a Therapeutic mattress. But the nice thing is if you remember that pressure mapping, what happens is because the patient sinks into the mattress, they're less likely to get pressure sores. So what we have is a patient only has a stage 1, or we're going to get into early what qualifies them for these mattresses. You're going to want to even put some of your patients on a stage 1 mattress so they never get that ulcer, and then we have to put them on a high-end mattress. The other one is that plastic doohickey. We call them APPs. They stand for alternating pressure pads. And what they do is every 5 minutes, one size rides and the other one goes down. So even though, like you guys, I see everyone sitting left on your left butt cheek, everyone switch to the right. And what happens with that thing is it'll actually go back every 5 minutes. So if you have a patient that has MS, is paralyzed, you name it, it's actually going to slightly move them throughout the night, even though they do nothing. And it's going to cut down on the odds of a pressure ulcer developing.